There's going to be some interesting position battles in Jacksonville at camp this year, but quarterback, not one of them. Trevor Lawrence enters his second year with a lot to prove after a tough rookie campaign. But day one of camp, former top overall pick, 3 of 5 on 7-on-7 drills, 3 of 3 on 11-on-11 scenarios. Christian Kirk caught a nice ball during one of those 11-on-11 drills, and the wide receiver spoke with our Pete Prisco afterward.
When people look at this team, they say, oh, the receivers, they're a little uncertain. What do you say to that?
I mean, I don't know how you come up with that statement, how you say uncertain. I think we have over 20 years of experience in our room, guys who've played a lot of football and have had a lot of success in this league. So I guess whoever has that opinion can keep it to themselves.
Kirk was part of a busy offseason for GM Trent Baalke, who upgraded the offense mostly through free agency as Jacksonville entered the period. Second most cap space available. Baalke saying it was going to be, quote, very aggressive. Jags offense, big plays is something they lacked last year. Just 31 big plays. That's runs of 20-plus yards or receptions of 30 or more yards the past 2 seasons combined. That's 51 behind the Ravens, who led the league with 82. All right, second straight day, we get Pete Prisco and Rick Spielman at Jags camp, a short bus ride from TIAA Bank Field. So, guys, they're also looking at Travis Etienne to add to that Jaguars offense. He missed the season due to that Lisfranc injury. What'd you guys see out of him yesterday? How healthy is he going to be, and how does he fit into Doug Peterson's offense?
Well, I think he's going to be a dynamic playmaker for them. I mean, here's a guy who can not only run between the tackles, but a guy who can line up out wide and catch the ball in the receiving part of the game. One thing about him, he's bigger. And I noticed that. I saw him a couple years ago before the draft. He was at a workout in Fort Lauderdale, and I looked at him, and I told Fred Taylor, who was standing next to me, and I said, he doesn't look anything like you. Well, he's gained weight. He's put on some lower body muscle. He looks thicker. And I asked him, I said, are you heavier? And he said, no, I'm in the best shape of my life. I weigh 208 pounds. And he said, one of the things he said, Rick, was, I don't want to just be a guy who catches the ball out of the backfield. I want to line up wide and run receiver routes, and I think they're going to use him in that way.
Yeah, and just to clarify, it wasn't media weight. It was actually good weight that he put on.
Obviously. There's a big difference.
Because you can see he's thicker through his upper, he's thicker through his lower, and a lot of times when these guys come out of college, you're still physically maturing. So you can tell, even though last year he did not play, he did put in a lot of work into that weight room and getting into conditioning. So I believe when he says he's in the best shape of his life.
You know, one thing he did say earlier to Jonathan Jones when he was here, that he mentioned Deebo Samuel as a comparison. I said, no. I told him, I said, that isn't you. You're Alvin Kamara.
Right.
And I think he will be more like Alvin Kamara than Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, and I compare him a little bit to Dalvin Cook, too, because he is a very good running back. He has excellent vision. He can bounce off tackles. He's got great contact balance. He can make people miss in space. He's an excellent receiver out of the backfield.
All right, Etienne, by the way, right behind you guys as you're talking about him. The FFT guys rank him the 20th ranked running back in fantasy, same ballpark as Zeke Elliott and Breece Hall. Guys, defensively, where do the Jags need a point of emphasis for them to play better this season?
Well, I think it's the run defense. And, you know, it's easy to say that when you look at teams around the league. They gave up 125 yards per game on the ground last year. Now, you were with a team that gave up 130 yards per game on the ground last year. And you know how tough that is, Rick. It's tough to play defense when you can't stop the run because, A, it wears on you. B, you can't turn your pass rushers loose. So I think that's become a focal point of the offseason for them. And that's why they went out and signed Fodakasi, because he's a big, wide body that can play in the middle and stop the run. And I think if they can stop the run, you talked all about the pass rushers yesterday. If they stop the run, they can turn those guys loose. It's going to be a better defense.
Well, the other thing you got to add into that is when a team is running the ball down your throat, it's almost demoralizing. And at the time of possession, because I know some of the philosophies around the league, if we can play good defense and we can run the ball on the opposing defense, we're going to be able to have time of possession and not have potentially an explosive offense or explosive quarterback have the ball in his hand. I think they're going to improve defensively because of their linebackers. They went out and signed the most productive linebacker in the NFL last year.
Olukan.
Yeah,
Olukan.
Yes, and then you go and draft Lloyd and you go and draft Muma. All those guys, the one thing that the common trait they have is they're very instinctive and very good football players and play the run very well.
You know, there's a feeling around the league, by the way, we talk about the run, that with the way people are getting smaller on defense, particularly on second and third down, that teams might go back to playing more of a power style of run game offense. Do you buy that?
I don't know if I'm going to see the power eye anymore back with Earl Campbell back there and a lead fullback. I think there's too many great athletes out here right now, and you're seeing a lot of 3 receiver sets, guys trying to create mismatches. So the defense is trying to match that with the athletes that they're drafting or they're signing as free agents to bring them in.
A lot to be desired. Gave up just under 27 points per game, did the Jags. And during this time, guys, when you're at camp, it's the first week. Outside of trying to downplay the Madden ratings and all the commotion that comes with that, what's the most important goal this time of year?
I think it's chemistry, and I think it's the first time these guys, and they're still in shorts as they go through their period of adaptation before they get, but once you get into the pads, that's where you start to create your identity. And that starts from the coaches and what they're instilling from an attitude standpoint, how tough the camp is. And I think Doug Peterson's camp, as you alluded to yesterday, a little bit of a country club right now. But I think once they get going in pads, you have to establish that mental toughness, and you really have to learn how to grind through the adversity and the two-a-days here in training camp.
Yeah, and I think it's the identity of the team from a schematic standpoint. Who are they? They're installing a new offense. This is, Trevor Lawrence is learning an entirely new offense for the second year in a row. On defense, Mike Caldwell comes over from Tampa. They're an aggressive defense. That's the style he wants to play. Can they play that? So I think this training camp has to be about figuring out whether they can do all the things they want to do based on the players that they have.
And the one thing this coach and staff will do is once they understand the strengths of each of these players, they'll adjust their scheme accordingly. And Caldwell, I know he wants to get pressure on the quarterback, but when you looked at Todd Bowles' defense last year, and he's worked for Todd Bowles and worked for him in the Jets as well, is that they do a lot of different zone packages behind it. So when we were talking about Shaquille Griffin, who can't play man coverage as well as he can do in zone, the other 2 guys in the secondary that I'm very excited to see make a step this second year is Cisco at free safety. He had 13 interceptions coming out of Syracuse in his 2020 season before he came out in the draft, was cut short because he blew his ACL out in September. And then you got Tyson Campbell, who is a long, athletic corner, part of that Georgia defense. And all those guys that come out of that Georgia defense and that Kirby Smart system know how to play defense in the NFL.
And they added a little Jacksonville pedigree here by signing Darius Williams from the Rams. He's going to be their nickel corner.
Speaking of chemistry and team building, there's going to be some omissions at certain camps, guys. Big names like Roquan Smith, Jesse Bates, Orlando Brown among the notables. Rick, I'll have you start first. What's it like to deal with some of these things with guys not there where they should be?
Well, there's 2 different scenarios with the screen that you're showing right now. Is Bates and Brown are not under contract. Technically, they did not sign their franchise tender. So if they do not show up, that means they're not getting fined. Where for Roquan Smith, if he doesn't show up, he's going to get fined $50,000+ a day. And if he misses preseason games, he could lose game checks. From a front office perspective, we always prefer to hold in. You've heard hold-ins versus holdouts. And holdouts, because the player is away from the facility, you don't know what kind of shape he's trying to stay in, and you're assuming because of the caliber of player that he's staying in the best shape possible. But a lot of these guys, and like if a Roquan Smith shows up and he is under contract, they may do a hold-in. And the benefit, if there is any, to a hold-in is that they're in the building. They're in the training room. They're in the weight room. They're sitting in all the meetings. You have their eyes on them. They may not be just practicing maybe 1 or 2 reps. We had that situation last year with Dalvin Cook before we were able to get an extension done. But the holdouts are a little bit more concerned because they're away from the facility, and you don't know what's going to come back once the contract gets done. But in the franchise situation, both those guys are done. They have to come in and play at the franchise tag. And without them signing that at the deadline, I doubt you will see them before week 1, if you see them at week 1.
All right, Rick, I'm the reporter. You're the GM of the Bears. What do you think about Roquan Smith not being here?
We're going to focus on the guys that are in camp right now. That's who we're worried about the most. That was in my GM book 101.
Quit lying to me. That was in my journalist book. Quit lying to me, Rick. We know you care about Roquan Smith not being here.
Love the role play as always. Jen, certainly appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of the day. Rick Spielman, Pete Prisco joining us here on HQ. Want to remind everybody of the Pick Six podcast, where they're talking about Tua Tagovailoa, can the Dolphins quarterback be the focal point of the high-powered offense? And other burning AFC East training camp questions. Will Brinson, Tyler Sullivan, we know Tyreek Hill pretty high on Tua these days.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.